All right. What is going on, everybody? It is Econ with Dave. Speaking on Dan Walters' CalMatters commentary from January 1st of 2026. New year may entertain political junkies, but California's sluggish economy deserves the spotlight. This commentary argues that despite the flurry of political drama, California's faltering economy should command the most attention. As key political storylines include Governor Gavin Newsom's near campaign for president, positioning himself as a high profile antagonist of Donald Trump, and maneuvers like an aggressive redrawing of district maps to favor Democrats. A crowded race to succeed Governor Newsom is currently on the minds of Californians, alongside big money ballot measures over taxes were noted. Let's remember, though, Walters emphasizes that California's economy is, quote, morbid. Really, he said moribund, but with virtually zero net job growth since the pandemic and the nation's highest unemployment rate at 5.6%. Industries are struggling. Southern California's film and TV production and the Bay Area's tech firms are cutting jobs, consolidating, or adopting AI, which has broad impacts. Stubbornly high jobless makes it harder to close budget deficits, driving for calls of new taxes to come in to cover the losses. It stops progress on persistent social crises like poverty and homelessness. Even the employed in California might feel an economic squeeze. As polling shows rising anxiety about those that are making ends meet and pessimism about future opportunities within the state. The author, Walters, warns that Newsom will continue touting California's huge $4 trillion GDP, as if this were a standalone nation, to burnish his record. The state leaders must not ignore the underlying economic ills. He urges that in 2026, the year California's leadership confronts these serious problems, they must be working to restore broad-based prosperity, lest we be complacent that would lead us to a Detroit-style decline. So, what are some of the counter-arguments? We understand that Walter is framing his piece as a rebuttal to Gavin Newsom, not the happy enjoyment, we're going to have great prosperity and success, but saying this guy is full of shit and is only getting prepared to align his own pocket by becoming president of the United States in 2028. Now, he even pointed out that Newsom often, quote, brags the state's economic might, implying a rosy narrative that everything is fine. But it counters with hard job data and unemployment. The commentary also refers to Newsom's allies and their focus on partisan fights. With them getting in it with, Trump feuds or the election strategy that was mentioned. However, Walters is speaking about stagnation, saying that there is an implicit counterpoint that if California's economy is truly strong, then Newsom's boasting, saying that he is the right one to run for president, that this is his blueprint was California to transition all of America into this same level of prosperity. And Walters is basically throwing water on that, saying that's not true. And he does not believe that is within the on-ground reality. Now, the only counter-argument that was presented is Newsom's positive spin. And Walters challenges that. The piece does not have any other rebuttal, no comments from Newsom's camp or any other one doing any analysis. This is a very critical aspect that he brings. The article introduces several themes. Economic stagnation is front and center, the lack of job growth, high unemployment, as well as, the return to, quote, zero net job growth, sluggish economy being thrown around, budget deficits, the ongoing debate about raising taxes versus cutting spending. Walter notes that slow growth underpins defaults and fuels pushes for tax increases, a topic expanded in the budget focused articles. Another common theme is Newsom's political ambitions influencing it once more. This is from January 1st when the piece was written. Going into the new year, we have the midterms coming up, and that's going to be critical. But we also have the reality that as President Trump continues to go down the road that he's going down, there will be issues and there will be hell to pay. Because we know that presidents that come in to the first half after they have either returned or it's their first time in there, historically there's a large revolt to them and they lose that political willpower after 2 years. We'll see what happens on this one. There was a mention of social challenges in California, such as poverty and homelessness. They had to be touched on, foreshadowing their mention as well in other articles as unresolved issues during Newsom's tenure. The piece sets the stage for the pattern of Walter's commentary, whether it's the skepticism about the health, as well as once more going at Newsom. Now, the reason why that I'm breaking this down is because we need to learn how to read articles. We need to learn how to read the room. We need to look to have identifying information that does not benefit our own specific bias time in and time out, but it's to have a real overall construction about what went wrong with Newsom's year and tenure as governor. And what were the positive things? Because once this comes to an end, there's going to be a whole study on the Newsom era in California. And that's the thing that people aren't talking about. Now, toughness and fairness. Remember, Walter's tone here is critical and cautionary. He is very straight to the point. He uses strong words like morbid, withering, and he verses that with Newsom with bragging. Now, we do need to remember there are always going to be, in this article and others that are similar to it, they always have these great pieces and structured where they emphasize negatives. Every positive, for instance, California's world-class GDP, is followed with, however, here's the negative implication. So let's remember that. When we read and we listen to these articles, we listen to their verbiage, again, we have to follow what they're saying and connect the dots that are missing. So here's some more. California Governor Newsom enters his final year in office. Okay. And it's interesting because there are a dozen hopefuls that are jockeying to succeed him, even as public interest in the governor's race remains relatively low within the public. Newsom's focus on national politics, for example, a TV interview where he criticized Donald Trump's actions, suggests that his White House ambitions will dominate his 2026 agenda, politically looking to undermine state governance. Walter stresses that a slew of urgent state issues demand attention. Chief among them is a, quote, deficit-ridden, end quote, state budget. California is facing what it appears to be as a multi-year financial shortfall. The nonpartisan analyst, Mr. Gabe, last name, I believe it's Patek, projects that a $18 billion budget gap immediately will hit and warns that it can balloon to $35 billion if unaddressed. Past budgets were propped up with gimmicks such as reserve withdrawals, internal borrowing, accounting tricks, but those one-time solutions are all nearly exhausted. Patek cautions that lawmakers, quote, can't count on a sluggish economy, end quote, to magically boost revenues, meaning tough choices really do lie ahead. Aside from the deficit, Walters lists other prescient crises that continue to defy Gavin Newsom's final year as it begins. Homelessness and poverty, an acute housing shortage, especially as bad as when Newsom first took office, an insurance industry meltdown due to large wildfire risk, and the woebegone bullet train project, soaring living cost, unsustainable water supply, in a ever-looming gasoline shortage as refineries shut down under strict environmental regulations. Adding to the gloom, California's $4 trillion economy has stalled out, and it's more than less than neutral. No net job growth since COVID, and the nation's highest unemployment rate alongside steep job cuts. Now, these are mentioned before. Now, Walters suggests that they pose a political challenge. They are likely to hamper Newsom's political pitch. Voters or opponents will point to California, and they'll look for the central governor's race. He pointedly asked whether Democrats are vying to replace Newsom will call these, quote, leftover issues, especially the deficit, and the present real solutions, or maybe these might just be posturing, looking to get into the right moment, seize up in the right, populist revolt against Donald Trump in order to have some sort of a change, some sort of a dynamic that'll allow him to get into office, even though one of his biggest critics here is looking to continue to push this on him. And that's something we have to understand. Newsom absolutely does leave a mixed legacy and one of big problems. And now these have to be handled off to the future successor. Now, what I want to give a little bit of credit for is within the commentary, Walters acknowledges that there are many different viewpoints, mainly on the budget issue. He notices that leaders are pushed by, quote, progressive Democrats, end quote, are strongly against scaling back social programs that were extended back when Newsom declared a massive surplus. These progressives and their allies are focused on solving the deficit through new taxes, and the fact that they're sponsoring ballot initiatives to expand higher earner income surtax and to establish a wealth tax on billionaires. On the other hand, Newsom steadfastly opposes raising taxes, likely because he doesn't want to be labeled as, quote, pro-taxes, end quote, as he eyes the presidency. And by laying out this clash, Walters presents the counter-argument of the left-leaning faction compared to Newsom's stance, implying finding cuts or one-time fixes are not going to give us, any real answer today. It's going to leave us in limbo. It's going to be the question that hangs above it. Is the person that's going to get in after Newsom going to do the same? And those are the questions we need to be asking ourselves. The articles don't endorse either side, but clearly Walters is not Gavin Newsom's biggest fan. And that is where this is all going to come from. Are we going to allow the same that has been before, continuing to allow that? Newsom's ill-fated 2022 surplus announcements. These are all different things. The fact that he called the state budget a mix between gimmicks and, quote, making hard choices. I mean, this is one of those things that we're wondering, what's going to really happen next. And for the everyday group of Californians, this is the question. Do we believe that Newsom is going to stand up for the rights of everyday Californians, look to try to answer these questions and leave the state in a better position than when he arrived with it? Or is this nothing more now than political theater brought together by someone like Trump, who is outside of the norms of politics and what has been used to for the last 14 years and more? And has changed the way that language is used in politics, has changed the way that, politicians that are vying for this, upcoming presidential election, and even though it's another 2 years, ladies and gentlemen, time flies. And to think that this is not going to come up and have these people that are, some would say that Newsom is playing theater. He is, bringing up the flames and the tensions and the scenarios and the problems. And now it's going to be on the next predecessor. Do we continue to kick the can down the road for California? Or is all of this hyperbole? These are the type of questions that I think we need to remain asking ourselves, especially as this year continues on. California is looking to be within one of its most interesting points in history. And the fact this is Newsom's last term and we have someone new who we can elect possibly with, a little bit more backbone than Newsom, might actually may or may not be a big positive. So I look forward to it. And most importantly, for all of you, I appreciate every single one of you. And thank you for taking the time for listening. And please have a wonderful night. I hope this sparked a idea within someone to start questioning more about the system, really breaking it down and getting into the meat of the situation and asking ourselves, what can we do as well for our own communities?